right. Well, I want to start by saying thank you for joining today's session for the National Board of Public Health Examiners CPH review session. My name is Ashley Mueller, and I am the Manager of Educational Programs at NBPHE. This year, we are celebrating 15 years of certification at NBPHE. And by becoming certified in public health, you join over 12,000 public health professionals who have chosen to raise the bar and distinguish themselves as public health leaders. We're excited for you to be here today and help prepare you for taking the CPH exam. So just a few logistical things I wanted to go over before I introduce today's presenter. I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A throughout the presentation. The chat is open so you can interact with your fellow audience members, which I see many of you doing right now. If you have any questions for our presenters, make sure to use the Q&A section so that we can see it. And our presenters will be answering questions at the end of their sessions. Also, we'll be raffling off a free copy of the APH CPH exam review guide at the end of every session. So by being here today, you are entered into you're entered into this raffle. And so we want to have you be here. And so let's start a conversation and enter where you're from in the chat. So for today's topic, we are going over the overview of certification in public health, which is presented by Allison Foster. Allison is the president of the National Board of Public Health Examiners, which administers public health certification programs. In this role, she is responsible for NBPHE's governance and operations, including the administration of the CPH exam. Allison lives in Arlington, Virginia, and is very active in the nonprofit community in the greater Washington, D.C. area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison, and Allison will take it away.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. And hello, everybody. It's so fun to see where you all are from. All right. So I'm, of course, going to launch a PowerPoint presentation. And all right, Ashley, am I good?
Yep.
Okay, super. Okay, so excited to have you here. I know many of you are getting ready to participate or take the CPH exam. So actually what we'd like to do first, so that we can, I can tailor my presentation a little bit, is launch a couple of polls just to find out where you are in the process. So Ashley's gonna launch a poll with first question. All right, so we just want to know, how far are you in thinking about getting certified in public health? Okay, Ashley, you want to show us the results? Okay, all right. Oh, that's great. Okay, this is a really nice mix. So it looks like the greatest number of folks on the session today are just starting to think about it, haven't even started to apply. So I'm going to be sure to cover sort of the A to Z of the application process. Few of you have started to begin your application. A number of you have already applied and you're getting ready to take the exam, and there's a few of you that actually have your exam scheduled. So the subsequent sessions should help you quite a bit. And there's a few of you that are already certified, so welcome. All right, so we have another question. Go ahead, Ashley. All right, so what we'd like to know is, when are you thinking you might want to get certified? When would you be expecting to take the CPH exam?
I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds. So we have still quite a few coming in.
All right, let's see. Well, how about that? Okay, so the most common answer was within 2 to 3 months. So you all are ready to go. That's fantastic. And then the next most common answer was within 6 months. So looks like the vast majority of you are planning to take the CPH exam this year. So that's great. All right, and the last poll we had is, what you want to take away from today's presentation.
Ten more seconds.
Okay, looks good. A number of you would like to hear more about eligibility and how to apply. I will cover those. Preparation for the exam, no surprise. That's why you signed up for the series. So we'll definitely cover that a bit more, and exam tips. And then a number of you want to hear everything we can tell you about the CPH certification. So fantastic. That's really, really helpful to hear why you're here and what you'd like to get out of it today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. There we go. Okay, so again, I'm Allison Foster. I'm the president of the National Board of Public Health Examiners. So we are a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. I just want to welcome you on behalf of the NBPHE Board of Directors. So our board of directors is comprised of individuals who are representatives of a number of different organizations representing academic public health and public health practice and membership organizations, accrediting bodies, etc. And we also have about a half dozen at-large CPH members on our board as well. So as Ashley said, we are celebrating our 15th year anniversary. Love, celebrations and see how far we've come in that time. To date, we've had over 13,000 individuals take the CPH exam. The CPH exam, even though we are based in Washington, D.C., is not entirely for the U.S. Most of our candidates are in the U.S. However, our exam is meant to certify individuals all around the world. So since the beginning, we have certified individuals or tested individuals in or from 95 different countries. So we are a bit more of a global certification. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but currently we have 13 schools and programs, about to be add a few more, but schools and programs that require their students and alumni to take the CPH exam. So it's been a really interesting development as we've grown over the last few years. All right, so first what we're going to do is we're just going to spend a few minutes on talking about why to get certified. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because I have a feeling if you've signed up to take this webinar series, then you're probably already interested in certification. But I do think it helps to hear a little bit about what the vision is for the CPH, because you will be part of the CPH community. Why was the certification developed? So the idea of a certification system for individuals working in public health has been around for a really long idea. I have a folder in my work drive of white papers and articles that have been written that date back to 1980. Since that time, there have been a lot of think tanks put together and working groups to really look at the need for certification in public health. At different times, the CDC has had calls for certification of the public health workforce. The Office of the Surgeon General in the United States has done the same. We've had a number of different groups said that this is an important step for public health as a profession. So as you would think, sometimes the great ideas take a little while to get off the ground. So there was lots and lots of discussion, but nothing really happened for a while. So after about 25 years of lots of discussion, the Association of Schools of Public Health and the American Public Health Association came together and said, enough talk. We need to make this happen. Let's go ahead and move forward with this idea. So they jointly created the National Board of Public Health Examiners as an independent organization. And then we spent the next 3 years building the certification program, developing the exam. And so we started testing candidates in 2008. So once it got started really quickly. And so here we are in 2024 and certifying individuals who are public health professionals. So what we're going to talk about now is a little bit like why public health certification is important. Why was this idea coming up over and over again? So as I don't think I need to tell you that public health is often under-resourced and under-prioritized. And so part of the original idea is that we've got to do whatever we can to professionalize public health. So, one question you hear is public health a goal or profession? I like to think that it's both, but it's definitely a profession. And so the idea was that we need to do what we can to create a professional identity for public health. And part of that is to have a certification program. So what you see here on this slide is a rubric that's common with many, many other professions. They almost all have these three elements. So the first one is degrees. So most professions have an associated degree. Public health certainly did. We've had public health degrees for over 100 years and many interdisciplinary degrees. So we certainly had degrees in public health. Accreditation, we've got accreditation for schools and programs. We've got accreditation for health departments. So accreditation is the approval process for institutions. So an organization would be accredited, not a person. So that's an important distinction because the third part of this rubric that we did not have for until the NBPHE was created was certification for public health. So certification is kind of a similar idea to accreditation, but it's for individuals. So again, organizations are accredited, people are certified. Licensure is actually very close to certification. So is registration. It just depends on whether it's voluntary or not. And if it's managed by a governmental entity, but for all intents and purposes, we're talking about certification today. So we haven't had public health certification. There are some specialized bodies in public health that would certify a subset of public health professionals. But to professionalize the field as a whole, then we need to have a certification for the entire field. And so that's really the driver behind the certified in public health credential. So one question that we get is, so if I have a degree in public health, why would I need a certification? And that's a good question. I understand the question, but then you just look around, any other profession, and it's so common that folks have to have both. So the example I personally like that I think resonates is we're coming up on tax season, right? We're going to get our W-2 soon and need to start thinking about filing our taxes. The person you go to file your taxes and put your taxes together is a CPA. I can almost guarantee you they have an accounting degree. You have to have the equivalent number of credits for a degree in order to sit for your CPH exam. And they have a certification, the Certified Public Accountant. So that's just one really easy example. Board certified physicians, they'll have a degree, an MD and DO, a medical degree, but then they sit for a board certification like the CPH. And then there's board certified in the specialty area. There's so many other examples that we could share. But I think this shows you that degrees and certifications really go together. They measure different things. We have a whole presentation we're not going to go in today, but the difference between degrees and certifications, but I can tell you that they're very complementary. They measure different things and they work together really well to build a profession. But you can also see that certification is kind of everywhere. Anybody that works in IT is familiar with certifications, other health professions. So that's one of the reasons why certification was needed in public health. So why would you be interested in certified in public health? And I'm sure you've got lots and lots of reasons. Maybe your employer is encouraging you to get certified. Maybe you're looking to distinguish yourself when you're going out in the job market. Maybe it's just time to make sure that you still remember the foundational knowledge that you might have studied in school and you've been out for a while. So what we do find is that folks, when they decide to get certified, there is sort of a scale, and I'd say most people are somewhere in between, but one end is individuals who got certified because they believe in public health as a profession, and they believe that certification is the way to move the field forward. And they think if they get certified, it's one more person who's going to sort of move us along into having public health be recognized as a defined profession. So they do it for those reasons. So there are also individuals that think it's going to help them on the job market, and it's going to help them to, find jobs or get a promotion or get an interview, etc. I think most people are probably a little bit in between, but those are both very, very valid reasons. So we could talk about each one, but what I'd like to do is a number of years ago, we brought some individuals into our office. It was right before COVID. And we asked them, it was unscripted. We just said, why are you getting your certification in public health? And so I'm going to show a little video. It's going to take about 2 minutes, and you're going to hear from them. And I think you'll note they each had their own reasons, but there's a lot that they have in common as well.
I graduated with my MPH 2 years ago, and I knew that I wanted to be certified in public health. My employer was thrilled to see that I have my CPH because they know that I'm a lifelong learner and I will continue to build my skill set.
I'm from an underserved community. I'm from Mississippi originally. That's why I decided to pursue a master's degree in public health, and I earned that a couple of years ago. And now with the certification in public health, the communities I serve will know that I'm up to date, I'm keeping up with my education, and I'm striving harder, and it will benefit those communities.
After returning from the Peace Corps, it was important to me to continue my public health education. As a community health volunteer in a rural village, I worked closely with decision makers and other community health volunteers. The CPH allows me to enhance my skill set through continuing education credits.
I took the CPH exam and got certified in public health as a self-affirmation of the knowledge and skills that I had received during my Master of Public Health program in Policy and Management. It was a fantastic way to share with my family and friends what I had learned during my 2-year program. It was also a great way for me to share with the general public that I care about my continuing education and want to advance the field of public health.
Even though my coursework provided me with the essential fundamentals of public health goals and initiatives, getting certified will help me excel in my work beyond the classroom to the broader hands-on field of public health, advancing my career as a public health professional.
I see the CPH as an opportunity to recommit myself to the field of public health and to renew my knowledge in all core areas, especially those that I don't get a chance to practice on a regular basis.
Getting certified in public health is a way for me to show my dedication to my profession and to also show that I'm up to date in the profession and I know what is happening and I can do my job.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and address a question that we do get often. I'm sure it'll probably come up in the chat too, but often candidates want to know, so is the CPH going to help me find a job, or is it going to help me in my job? And so our answer is we can't say that for sure, because there are how many employers out there and an infinite number of jobs. It's hard for us to give a very defined answer when every employer can make their own decision. What I can tell you is that in areas of the United States where we have a lot of CPH living and working, particularly those where there's a school or program that requires the exam, the employers are starting to pay attention and starting to require the CPH. So it is happening on a localized level, and it makes sense. If you're working someplace and you've got a lot of CPHs applying, then you realize this is a great tool to, identify good candidates, and you're going to start to look for those candidates. If you're living in areas where there aren't a lot of CPHs, happening a lot more slowly, but it is starting to happen. So it partly depends on which job you're looking for, which employer, and what part of the country you're living. But what we can tell you more definitively is that there have been a couple different studies done by the Institute of Credentialing Excellence and Gallup Strata, where they looked at employer attitudes towards certification. And what they found is that employers recognize the value of certification, even if they don't know a specific certification. There's thousands and thousands of certifications. Even if they don't know the one you have, they will know that a certification is says a lot about the candidates. It shows that they had the wherewithal to sit for a standardized exam and pass it, that they're committed to their field, that they believe in the importance of continuing education to maintain the certification. So having the CPH is going to help you to in your career field and in your career projection. All right, so this slide just shows they found that certificates can get higher paying jobs, and this is on the second graph, it shows that certificates agree that if they have a certification, they tend to get paid more than employees that don't have a certification. So, all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through a bit about the application process and the eligibility, just to make sure that you all have an idea if you're eligible or not. Then we're going to spend most of the time today talking about the CPH exam and kind of getting you ready for the study sessions that are coming up over the next couple of weeks. And then finally, we're going to talk about recertification. Okay. So exam eligibility. So to be certified, you have to pass the exam, but first we have to determine that you're eligible. So most certification bodies don't want somebody to walk in that has no experience in the field and it isn't associated with the profession to take a certified exam. And so we have a couple different routes to eligibility, no matter how you qualified. If you are eligible and you take the exam, you all take the same exam, you all get the same CPH. So it really doesn't matter in the end how you got to the point of certification. So the first is anybody who has graduated from a CPH accredited school or program would be eligible to take the exam. And students who are currently attending a CPH accredited school or program would be eligible to take the exam. The caveat there is that if you're currently a student, your program or school has to confirm that you're ready to take the exam. Typically, they would require you to take in the core courses or to have finished your first year. Every school and program could have slightly different criteria. They just don't want their students to take the exam too early and not be successful. But with that said, that students are eligible to take the exam. If they pass the exam, they're provisional until they graduate. So if you want in the FAQs, we can, or the chat at the end, we can talk a bit about that a bit more. And then we also have a route for eligibility for folks who do not have a CPH accredited school or program degree. So anybody who has a graduate level degree that's related to public health, and we're pretty holistic when it comes to, what do we consider related degrees, but definitely anything in the health profession, if you think that there's a relationship there, we'd probably agree. Then in that case, you'd have to have 3 years of public health work experience. And if you have a bachelor's degree, then in any area, it does not need to be related to public health, then you'd have to have 5 years of work experience. So on our website, we actually have under the eligibility criteria, we actually give some examples of what we consider public health work experience. I can tell you it's not just work at a health department. Public health professionals work in so many different settings. I mean, nonprofits and for-profits, and it's really about the role and the function. Is your work preventive-based? Is it focused on health promotion? Is it population-based? If you think the work you're doing is related to public health, then I would not be too concerned if you think that the setting doesn't lend itself or doesn't seem like typical public health. So we are always happy to take questions before you apply if you're just not sure about that. All right, so when you register to the exam, you'll create an account in what we call CPH Central. It's right on our website. It's sort of a one-stop shop, as you know, folks say. So you will do everything. You'll apply, we'll review your application, and that's where you'll go back after you take the exam and you can retrieve your score reports, and that's also where you would recertify. So everything happens in CPH Central. So to create an application, you go to Get Certified, and there's a drop down that says Apply Now. Should only take you a few minutes to complete your application. We don't ask a whole lot of questions. If you are applying under our work experience criteria, so again, if you do not have a degree from a CPA credit school or program, you'll apply under work experience. If that's the case, you will need to upload a copy of a resume and a copy of one of your student college transcripts. It can be a student copy though, that's fine, and you'll upload it yourself. So we try to review folks as quickly as possible. You should be reviewed and get a confirmation within 2 weeks. So if it ever takes longer than that, please reach out to us and ask us. For work experience, maybe we just need to remind our reviewers, if you're applying as a student or alumni, we might need to reach out and remind the schools or the programs. They might have just gotten busy, but we will try to get your application approved right away. So once it's approved, you'll get a message from us saying you've been approved to take the exam. Within about 15 minutes, you'll get a set of scheduling instructions from our testing partner, Measure Learning. Those scheduling instructions will have you log into their site, and then you can schedule your exam. You can schedule as soon as you want. This screenshot says 72 hours, but actually if you're taking it by live online proctor, you can actually take it within 2 days. However, most people aren't going to want to apply and be approved and take it a couple days later. Most people, there's a little bit in between where they're going to want to study. In that case, it's important that you know there is no deadline by which you need to take the exam. We believe once you're eligible, you're always eligible. And so you can take as much time as you want. Just hang on to those scheduling instructions so that you can test whenever you're ready, but we do not have a deadline by which you need to take the exam. Okay, so the exam, we have one fee for application exam fee. It's all rolled into one. So the fee, the regular fee is $385. However, we want to make the certification as affordable as possible. And so we partner with different organizations and offer discounts. And we've got more discounts right now than I could list on a PowerPoint slide. So if you go back to our website under Get Certified, there's a page called Fees and Discounts. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see all the different organizations that we offer discounts. It's membership organizations, employers, schools and programs, military, etc. So you can see if you qualify for a discount. Once you apply, we will ask you a series of questions and the discount will automatically calculate. So by the time you are ready to submit your application, the discount will be factored into what you pay at the end. So taking the exam. So one thing we've changed a few years ago is we actually test all year round. We do not have testing windows. So what that means is quite literally 365 days a year, you can take the exam. You can take it on live online proctor, which I will talk about in a moment, but you can take that on holidays as well, because we test outside the United States. So we need to be open every day of the year. So whatever time frame you're thinking you want to take the exam, that works for us. So to take the exam, you'll actually have two options. You can either go to a computer-based testing center, or you can take it by live online proctor. So for the computer-based testing center, I'm sure you've taken like the GREs or GMATs or something at a testing center at some point in your life, and it's very much the same thing. We have a network of testing centers all around the world. We've actually got 1,400 testing centers that are typically open Monday through Saturday. So you can have a morning appointment or an afternoon appointment. You're welcome to take it at a computer-based testing center. On our website in our FAQs, there's a place where you can actually put in your zip code and it'll tell you which testing centers are close to you. So if there is one close to you, you might want to consider that as an option. And some folks like to go to a computer-based testing center because they know the equipment's going to be there and there's somebody to support to help them if they need help. But we do have some folks that either aren't close to a computer-based testing center or would just rather test at home by live online proctor. So the way live online proctor works is you would need to have a private area, meaning you can't have people walking around. You need to have a clear surface, so you can't have your books out. You need to have a computer, so you cannot test with a tablet or a phone. It has to be a PC or a computer, laptop. And you'd have to have a single monitor, a mic, and a camera, and that's it. If you've got in a high-speed internet connection, sorry. And if you've got those things, then you can test at your office, at your home. It doesn't really matter where you are. So what happens is you log in through a Zoom link. You meet the proctor. They install software that prevents folks from going to other websites while they're taking the exam. They check your room with a camera just to make sure that the surfaces are clean and you don't have any cliff notes. And then you can take the exam. So it's a very convenient way to take the exam if a testing center is not your preferred method. So by live online proctor, you can take it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And one good thing is there are people who are night owls. They just do better at night. And in that case, yes, you can take the exam at 10 p.m. at night. If that is when you are at your best. So we have more about each of these options. And if you, for some reason, have to reschedule your exam, or if you have to retake the exam, you can switch between methods. You're never locked into one particular way or the other. So when you take your exam, we're going to talk about the exam content area and the domains in a minute, but when you take your exam, no matter how you take it, you will know as soon as you press the submit button whether you passed or failed the exam. So you do not need to wait for something in the mail. You will know right then if you were successful taking the exam. Technically, you should be able to download your score report or have the proctor print them if you're at a testing center. Often that doesn't happen for various reasons. You can, by the next morning, come back to our website, log back into CPH Central, and then you can download your score. We find that most people, whether they passed or not, want to see how they did across the different areas. They just really want to know. So you can always download your score report by the next morning from our site. All right, so the exam itself is 200 questions. It's always 200 standardized questions, so multiple choice, single best answer. You get a 4-hour window to take the exam. We don't say it's a 4-hour exam anymore because what we found is that most people don't take 4 hours to take the exam. Some do, but the average candidate takes just under 3 hours to take the exam. And so what that tells us is that our exam window is long enough that if there is somebody that needs to take more time to check their answers, to go a little more slowly, just needs to take a moment and clear their mind before they go to the next question, you should have enough time because the average is well under 4 hours. We also have an accommodations process for folks who need additional time for medical reasons. The 4-hour window does include a bathroom break. So if you're worried about sitting for 4 hours, yes, you can take a bathroom break sometime in the 4-hour period. You can also have a clear bottle with water with you as well. So we want you to be comfortable. We want you to do well on the exam. So if you take the exam as a student or alumni, it's important that you know that your school or program, somebody at your school program, will have access to your scores. And part of the reason for that is, as I mentioned, there are a number of schools and programs that are requiring their students to take the exam as a graduation requirement. And certainly they need to know how their candidates are doing. But we found that in general, schools and programs really want to know how their students and their alumni are doing, because it gives them great information about how well are they teaching their curricula. We don't want them to do the test, as they call it, but we find that it is really great empirical data for them to have to understand how their students and alumni as a group do on the exam. So there's usually designated 1 or 2 people at each institution that can log in and see CPH exam scores. So if you take the exam through our work experience criteria, we don't give access to CPH scores to individuals unless you might be in a program where your employer or is sponsoring you to take the exam and they're paying for your exam. In that case, talk to them because they might be able to get a report that shows how you did on the exam. So if you are going to be taking the exam under work experience criteria and your employer is paying for you to take the exam, then I talk to your employer and just find out if they're going to be able to see your exam scores. All right. So we do realize that folks worry about how are they going to do on the exam. That's normal, definitely. So I hope that this will help a little bit, is that what you can see is our passing rates over time are in the now in the mid 80s. So this is how many people pass. This is not the cut score. This is not the percentage you need to get to pass the exam. This is how many people passed. And you can see it's at the lowest, it was in the mid 70s, and it's actually in the mid to high 80s now. So you can see we were actually at 88%. That does include people who retook the exam, but we don't have a whole lot of retakers. That in the vast majority are first time only test takers. So I hope this makes you feel a little more comfortable, is that most people, by the time you're eligible, you should know a lot of the content needed because you've got that degree, you've got that work experience. It's why we set our eligibility standards so high, is because we want people to be mostly prepared before they even start to study. And now we've got these really great study resources available that I'm going to share with you in a minute. So most people do go into the exam well prepared. So if you pass the exam, a couple things are going to happen. You will show up in a CPH registry online. This is what it looks like right now. It's basically a way for employers to search and see who's certified. A lot of them use it in the job hiring process just for verification purposes. The only people that show up in this registry are those who pass the exam and are active as a CPH. If you did not pass the exam, I promise you we will not publish that on our website. So after you pass the exam, we'll also send you a certificate and a little lapel pin and some packet information. We also issue virtual certificates, which are customized URLs. So you can use this, post the link to this, in your LinkedIn profile or after your email signature, and people can click, they see your certificate, and they can scroll down and learn more about the CPH. So for folks who do not pass the exam on their first attempt, we do allow for retakes. We currently do not have a limit on how often people can retake the exam. And the reason why is because at any given time, we are administering many versions of the exam. So you go take the CPH exam with your colleague, you're probably going to have a whole different set of test questions. And we do that so that we can let people retake. So if they take it, once, they'll get Form A, and the next time they take the exam, they'll get Form B, and et cetera, et cetera. So they're not getting an advantage by seeing the same questions. To retake the exam, just by the day after you did not pass the exam, you can log back into our website, pay a $150 retake fee, which is lower than the original price. And then immediately you'll get scheduling instructions. You don't need to go through the verification process again. And most candidates who do retake do better. Their scores tend to go up with every retake. So if you're did pretty well but not quite good enough, then hopefully a second attempt will allow you to pass. So what I'm going to talk about now is I'm just briefly going to go through the content outline, what's on the exam, and that's really where you're going to do a deep dive over the next couple of weeks and talk about the content of the exam in much more detail than I could do today. So content outline is what the term we use to describe, it's like a blueprint of what is on the exam. Okay, so first, how do we even decide? Public health's a huge field. How do we decide what needs to be on this exam? So we follow a process that almost all certification bodies do called a job task analysis. So it's a survey that is administered to people working in that field. And what we ask them is, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? How frequently and how critical is it to your job? So it's a long survey because we are just trying to identify the tasks that are most, I'll use the term important, the most critical, the most frequent. And that is the basis. That is how we know what to write exam questions on. We don't want to test on the niche. We don't want to test on the things you rarely do or the things that just aren't all that important. To make sure that we are measuring the competency of public health professionals, we need to make sure we're testing on the right things. And so we do this through this survey process, and we do it every 5 to 7 years. So we've always got a new content outline on the horizon. So this is our current content outline, and I hope you all have at least seen this once before on our website or some of our marketing materials. So these are we call them domains, and I think of them like, well, you could call them buckets or chapters. So if we look at them like chapters, within a chapter, you'll have the chapter title, but then it's really the content of the chapter that matters. So within this domain, we have a list of tasks, and those tasks are how we know what exam questions do we need to have on the exam. But we have, I'd say 150 tasks or so. It's a lot to wrap your head around. So that's why we break it into domains. It's a little easier to absorb what's on the exam by looking at the domains. So hopefully these look familiar to you. I'm sure that some of you are thinking, oh yeah, I studied that in school, or, oh yes, this is exactly what I do for my job. A couple of these should be familiar to you. But there might be some domains that are less than familiar. So the good news is you do not need to pass every section. We do not have a passing score per section. It's overall. So we literally just count all the right answers. So what that means, and I'm gonna flip back for a second, what that means is, yes, if you have a domain here where you're not quite as confident, and we encourage you to study, of course, but if there's one where you're just really having trouble with, if you do well enough in the other domains, you can still pass the exam. So don't let one domain discourage you, disproportionately. The other thing I'll mention is that the one in the left, evidence-based approaches to public health, that is basically biostats and epidemiology and informatics. That's the one I think that people are the most anxious about. I'm sure there's some of you out there, on the webinar today that's what you do and you're confident, but there's a lot of you, I'm sure, where you're worried about that domain. So I'm not going to tell you not to worry about it. What I am going to remind you is it's 10% of the exam, the same as communications, in leadership, in law and ethics, etc. So please keep that in mind when you're figuring out how to study. Don't put 90% of your effort into a 10% domain. I would encourage you to try to distribute, even though there's one you're worried about, try to distribute how much time you allocate to each domain. And just one little exam tip is that there's no penalty for guessing. So if you have a domain, a question, and you just don't know the answer, then you should just guess, because at least you'll have a 25% chance of getting it right. If you leave it unanswered, you have a 0% chance of getting it right. All right, so we were going to do some practice questions, but you've got these great sessions coming up, so we're not going to do that. And I'm actually going to flip through and talk about study resources. So what we're going to do is just cover some of the resources that are currently available, so that you can start to build a path to what you would want to do to prepare for the exam. Okay. So if you go to our website, again, under Get Certified, there's a page called Study Resources. And so everything I'm going to show you is on that page, okay? So the first top of the page is your self-assessment. And I'm going to go through these in a second in more detail, but the first section is going to help you come up with a plan. Like what do you need to know, study, and how long should you take, and which resources should you use? And so the first section will help you with that. The next section is dynamic, meaning it changes all the time. We're always adding things. So please, if you've seen it once before, go back and check, because there might be something else there that's new. But these are the resources that we can suggest. to preparing for the exam. So I'm going to just give you some tips what we recommend, but please keep in mind every one of you is going to have a slightly different style to preparing for the exam. Some of you are good at cramming. I could never stay up overnight and study for an exam when I was in school. That's just not my style. But I know there's some people that do really well. So think about how were you successful when you were in school and, and when you got your degree. And that might be a good place to start, is know your own strengths and weaknesses and how you study best. So first thing I would do though, is if you haven't already, go onto our website and look at the content outline. Again, it's on the study resources page. It's about, I want to say 10 pages. It's long and detailed, but I would not go through it with a highlighter and mark mark things up or anything like that. What you want to do at first is just scan it. Because we could say the domain is program management. What does that mean? What it means is in the details. It's in these tasks that you see listed. This is just an example, but that's what's going to be on the exam. And so what you want to do is scan the content outline and kind of do a gut check. You're going to see some domains you're going to think, I don't know what they're talking about. That might be a domain you need to focus on a little more. And you might see some you think, oh yeah, I'm sure I've got this domain. I'm really comfortable in it. And maybe you don't need to study very much in that area, but the content outline is going to give you a much better feel about the details of what could be on the exam. So we have a few sample questions on our exam on our website. It's only a few. It's not meant for you to do any kind of assessment. It's just so you can kind of get a feel for how do we write our questions and the format and what do we mean by single best answer, etc. So you can just do a quick review and, it's just a sneak peek into what the questions could look like. But I'm sure you're interested in knowing, well, how hard are the questions and what are the topics, etc. So we have 2 practice exams that are available on our website. They are free. They're each 50 questions each. And these are questions that we retired from our item bank. So these were either ready to be actual items or they were tested as items and then we retired them because they'd had too much exposure, meaning they'd been used too many times. So these are the best, I think, reflection of what's on the exam of anything you're going to find out there, because these really were in our item bank. So my suggestion is take one of the practice exams whenever you feel like it. Then set your course to study. We've got a document on our website where you can actually write down your plan to study. Think about, do you want to get together in groups with other people? Are you going to review webinars? Are you going to, purchase a study guide? Once you've gone through that studying process, take the other practice exam and see if your scores changed at all. So when you take the practice exam, one thing that we really like about it is it looks very much like what it looks like to take the exam. It's hosted by the same Measure Learning that actually administers the exam. So you're going to get a sense of what does the environment look like. But at the end of the practice exam, for each domain, it will tell you if the way you answered was a possible strength for that domain, satisfactory, or a possible weakness. So if you, for each domain, have possible strength or satisfactory, that's good. That means that you would have been successful. If you have a lot of domains that are possible weaknesses, that probably means you need to study more. And there's not 100% correlation between how people do on the practice exam versus the actual exam, of course, because they are different questions, but I think it's a best tool you're going to find to see, are you ready to pass the CPH exam? Okay. So yeah, so and I just want to mention, if you just get 1 or 2 possible weaknesses, you still could probably pass the exam, and it depends on what the score you got, and that I wouldn't know, but don't let a couple possible weaknesses tell you it's impossible to pass the exam, because it very well could be successful. All right, so a couple other things. We've also got webinars on our website, like you're about to go through in the next couple weeks, but we've got some older ones too. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I like to hear something a couple different ways, have different people explain it to me. So especially if there's some domains where you're feeling a little less confident, go back, look at our website. ASPPH recorded a number of webinars a few years ago on each of the domains, and they're fantastic. We get really good reviews on those too. And the content is still relevant. So if you want reinforcement, you love the sessions you're about to participate in the next couple of weeks, and you want more of that, go back and look at these webinars, and they're all available for you. So there are 3 website study guides available right now. So we encourage you to take a look at those. The first on the left is one that's developed by Springer Publishing, and it's got lots and lots and lots of practice questions. So if you feel like you just need to practice taking standardized questions, then that's a good study guide. APHA developed the one on the right with the highlighters. That's also a really good study guide. It's a different format. It's actually chapter based. So if you are unfamiliar with the domain and you need to learn more about that domain, similar to what you're going to do on the review sessions, this chapter actually, our study guide has a chapter in each of the domains. So you can actually read through some material. It has some practice questions, but really it's more of a primer and the core or the domains on the exam. And then finally, there's an online CPH study guide that is lots and lots of practice questions. It's interactive. It's kind of fun because when you answer some questions, a video pops up and somebody explains why, you know, the correct answer is correct, etc. So lots of options for you if you feel like you need to have some more resources in preparing to take the exam. And finally, the review courses. You're going to be here, you know about this one. We're really excited to have this series. We do host review sessions during the year. Sometimes, like the ones here, were sponsored for different organizations. So keep an eye on, sometimes they're open to the public, sometimes they're not. So keep an eye on our website periodically if you're interested, especially if you want to do, you know, an in-person review session. Just take a peek at our website every once in a while and see if we've got one. And we'll also push it out by email if you're in our system as well. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to go really fast through the recertification in the next 2 minutes so we have time to answer some questions. But I do want you all to know, if you're going to be certified, certification is an ongoing process. Once you pass the exam, you do need to do something to stay certified. So I don't want to not mention this. In our case, we have a biannual recertification process, which means every 2 years, you need to report recertification activities to us to maintain your CPH. So a lot of you are familiar with CMEs or CEUs, or a lot of organizations offer these credits for other certifications. Ours is different for 2 reasons. One is we don't have pre-approved providers, which means if you want to go to a conference, you can go to any conference as long as the topic, you know, materials related to public health. We're not going to get in between you and the conference you want to go to because it's not the right provider. We don't do it that way. So it's really about, does the activity meet our guidelines, and is the content related to public health? It does not matter what organization offers that activity. And the other is some certifications require you to go to a certain number of conferences or do certain types of trainings. We're very flexible because public health is too broad of a field. We just could not come up with the same guidelines for everybody who's got their CPH. So we allow for lots and lots of different types of activities, and this just gives some snippets. But, you know, one example I'll call out is volunteer and leadership service. We give credit for that. It's important to public health, and so many public health professionals outside of their day-to-day job have leadership roles or active as volunteers, other public health organizations, and so we give credit for those. So by the time you get certified and start thinking about recertification, just keep in mind that we allow for so many different types of activities, and you're always welcome to reach out if you have questions. All right, so I'm going to end there, and we'll see if we've got questions.
We do have questions, Allison. So everyone, just so you know, just one more time, if you do have questions, put it in the Q&A. I'm monitoring both the Q&A and chat, but just so I don't miss anything, please put it in the Q&A. All right, so our first question, we have a couple questions about eligibility. The first one is, if I have an MD or a DO, can I take this exam?
As long as you have at least 3 years of relevant public health experience.
Okay, great.
But yes, a DO or MD would be relevant. Yes.
who does the request to go to confirm eligibility as alumni? I submitted my application a few days ago and I haven't gotten a response. How long does it usually take?
We just say give them 2 weeks, but if it takes longer, if you tell us, then we can remind that person to please, sometimes they're just busy or on vacation or something. We'll send a reminder, and then if we don't get a response, then we will send you their contact information and you can contact them. So I would say give it another week and then please reach out to us and we'll kind of facilitate that.
Okay. If I pass the exam, will my college be notified even if I graduated?
They will be able to see that you passed the exam, yes.
Okay.
They won't get a ping or anything, but you will be on that list of successful at passing the exam.
Okay. Would you consider volunteering in AmeriCorps Vista program, public health experience?
I would, as long as it was more or less full-time. I don't think it matters if it's paid or not. But it does matter if it's full-time in AmeriCorps or Vista, I would assume would be full-time.
Okay. If I there's a bunch of ifs, so this is one more. If I worked as an undergraduate research assistant, does that count as public health experience?
Probably depends on what you were doing. I would say in a case like this, send us your resume. That's the fastest way for us to give you an opinion. So I'll mention if somebody applies through our work experience criteria and their application is not approved, we will fully refund your money because we don't have a checklist of public health experience, but you still had to go through the trouble of applying. So I'd say send us your resume so we can see a little more about what you're doing and we can give you an opinion. But then we would likely, if it's possible you to be eligible, then we'd encourage you to apply so we can know for sure.
And so we do have someone who just said that they were a nurse. Do you want to, is public health nursing qualify as?
If it's public health nursing, 100%.
Okay, great. All right. And then this one, it says, thanks, Ashley and Allison, for organizing this awesome series. I'm recruiting my first cohort to train and sit for the CPH exam. My most common question regarding eligibility is that folks want to have an idea of related fields for bachelor's or master's degrees. Can you offer some guidance what constitute related fields?
So for bachelor's degree, it doesn't matter. They don't need to be related. You could have a degree in anything, and as long as you got the 5 years work experience. For graduate degree, we don't have a list, but if there are core functions or skills that are related, then we would count it. So it wouldn't necessarily be health. Like if somebody has a business degree, those are skills that are needed in public health. So that would be considered related. So again, I would say if somebody's just not sure, just to email us and we can give you an assessment.
Okay. So if someone has taken the exam before and they need to retake, what is the current rate of people who have to retake the exam?
The pass rate for retakers?
I do have, yeah, so there's another question. What is the current pass rate of the total exam? And then what's the current retake pass?
Yeah, we have the statistics for retakers and I just don't remember off the top of my head. For currently it's in the mid-80s for first time. And the retakers, I feel like it's slightly higher, but it's many less people retake the exam. But for the ones that do, they tend to do better. So what we see is that people's scores, if they persist, do tend to go up with every exam. And that's not every time. There are exceptions, but people, I think they get a little more comfortable. They've had more time to study. And so people tend to do better as they take the exam subsequent times.
We do have another question about retake. So if you don't pass, can you review the content areas to see where you were stronger and where you were weaker?
You'll get your scores by domain. We can't share the actual questions with you for exam security purposes, but yes, you will know which domains with the score you got for each domain so that you can, maybe tailor how you prepared.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in the exam, if you want to go back to a question or skip a question, are you able to do that while taking the exam?
You sure can, yep.
Okay. Then this is just a question. What's the retake exam price?
It's $150 to retake the exam.
Okay. And then as far as how do we know where the in-person testing centers are in our area? On the website, I just see test sites, but not specific test centers in those areas.
So when you do the search, it'll tell you the cities. It doesn't give you the exact address. But when you get I think it's because the addresses could change. So Measure doesn't publish it. But when you go to actually schedule, you will see the exact address. So if you're not sure if it's very close to you and you have to make a decision between computer-based testing or live online proctor, when you're scheduling and you see, oh, that address is not convenient, you can just switch to live online proctor.
Okay. And then if someone has already scheduled their exam, but they want more time to study, are they able to change their exam date?
Yeah, I believe it's if you reschedule 10 days before your date, there's no fee. If you schedule 10 to 2 days, roughly, there's like a $15 fee to reschedule. And then if you get 1 to 2 days before your exam, then you would have to pay a retake fee. So if you know you're going to reschedule, then reschedule as early as you can.
Okay. If you fail the first time and you need to retake the exam, do you have any suggestions and strategies of how to study so you pass the second time?
I would probably, look at the pace, how long you took to take the exam. Maybe you need to slow down a bit because some people are anxious and they rush through. I would definitely look at the domains. Some certification bodies don't share scores with candidates, but that's why we do, because we think it's important. We cover so much material and we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to, study where they need to pull up their scores. So, and then, go back and review some of the material that maybe you hadn't had a chance to look at. There are, like I said, 3 study guides, many webinar series. So maybe instead of reading the same study guide, maybe check out another one or watch a different webinar just to get a different perspective.
Then as far as the study materials, they saw that the second book, it's the second edition of the CPH study guide. How often do those get updated?
So it depends on the publisher, but I believe that Springer and APHA are going to be releasing new versions of the study guides sometime this year. Unfortunately, we can't say that for sure because they're not our study guides. That's why we can't definitively answer that question. But every few years is typical.
All right, this one is if you're currently getting your CP or your MPH, and would you get the certification immediately or after your degree is completed?
Well, what we hear a lot is that students say take it as soon as you can because you're learning, you're taking all the classes that are going to help you to pass the exam. It's in your head right now. And I don't know about you all, but I tend to forget things after a while. And so it's fresh in your mind. So we hear that a lot from students is to take it as soon as you can.
What if I don't want my school to see my results, especially if I fail?
We can't suppress it. Then you could apply through our work experience criteria. And if you do that, the school won't know you took the exam.
And so as far as recertification credits, can you explain how current CPH can get credits by attending these webinars?
So the way we measure recertification credits is typically it's 1 recertification credit per hour. So if you're on a webinar, it's related to the topics public health, and you could report 1 recertification credit for it. And in our form, so you can report as you go, but it just asks you the title, description, how many hours, date, and you just fill it out. It's kind of self-report. So yeah, if any of you are certified, you can report today's webinar in your recertification application.
Okay. And then how many credits do you need for recertification? You
So it's
mentioned.
yeah, 30 every 2 years. So
30
it
every 2 years.
averages, 15 a year.
Okay. I do have a question. How does this test differ from the CHESS certification?
So we do a lot in similar ways. We build our exam, use similar models, etc. The difference is really in the scope. So this certification is covers all the areas of public health, and CHES, while they might touch on it, is really focused on health education. So it's a much deeper dive into health education.
Let me see here. Okay, I think that's for the most part what we have for today. Let me see if there's just one last question. For recertification, can you take the exam, or is it only continuing education? And what kind of things would qualify as continuing education?
So I think technically you could take the exam. We've never had anybody want to do that, but if that is what you want to do, then reach out and we'll see if we can make that happen.
All right, well, that's it for today. Our next session is next Tuesday, and that'll be going over the domain of policy. So that'll be an in-depth overview of policy, as well as going over practice questions on that section. So the same link will work. So we hope to see you again on Tuesday. Thank you.